Today's the day where I share with you where the magic happens in my sewing studio. I'm Sharon with Sharon Sews, and welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Have you ever wondered, how many patterns does she really have? How much fabric does she really have? This is the video where you get to find out. And I'm going to admit how much fabric and patterns I really do have. Now, here are a couple photos of my sewing space, and I will go into detail on all of this in the video. And I know that I am incredibly blessed to have such a huge space to create in. It is an extra bedroom, and it is 12 feet by 13 feet. Now, that was not always the case. There was many years in my life where I just had a tiny little corner. Like in this case, it's from the early 80s. It's a photo of me with the Kenmore sewing machine from the 60s that I really wish I still had. That was my mother's machine that she gave to me. And I just put my fabric and patterns on a little tray that I tucked into a corner. You know what? You make do with what you have. It worked just fine. These are the machines I sew on. This is my latest purchase. This is a Pfaff. I love that brand. And it's a Quilt Expression 720. Now, I had no plans to purchase a new machine. I loved the machine that I will show you next and had sewn on it for probably 15 years. But when I was doing my mask making, my machine conked out. I mean, you just can't sew 200 masks like that. It died. And because so many people were sewing masks, the lower price machines were out and lead time for getting a machine serviced was quite long. So I splurged and I purchased a new machine. This is not an embroidery machine. I just didn't have that in my budget for an embroidery machine. It does have decorative stitches, so I can utilize decorative stitches for embroidery as I need it, but this has everything that I need, and I really like it. That is a Quilt Expression 720. This is fairly new within the last few months. That's my main machine. Now this one, oh, I love this one. This is also a Pfaff. This is a Performance 2056. And as I said, I purchased this, I want to say 15 years ago, maybe 12. I don't recall for sure. A little bit of dirt there. As you can see, oh, I didn't take really good care of it. Look at how scratched up that is. So this was my little workhorse. I loved it. I had no intention of purchasing a new machine because I loved it that much. It just does everything that I need. But I got to tell you now that I'm sewing on that Pfaff 720 Quilt Expression, this has become my backup machine, and typically it is not setting up here next to it because I like that space next to it. I typically have it tucked down here where that machine foot pedal is. So let's move on to the serger. This was also a new serger that I bought since we moved. This is a Baby Lock Evolution. The serger that I did have was a Elna purchased new 22 years ago, served me really well. But I got to tell you, I love this Baby Lock Evolution. I love the air thread on this. It is amazing. That was probably one of the things I hated most about serging, and why I typically would not serge was because it was so hard to thread. So there we go. Those are the three machines that I'm currently using right there. Now, what I'm sewing on is not sewing on, but what the machines are sitting on is a koala cabinet. Keep little things that I use all the time are right here. Other than that, I don't really use the storage here too often. But what my husband did for me is took this part right here. It now looks like one great big long table. Well, that is not how this was designed. This piece right here, he has attached it for me using brackets. It's quite strong. He's attached it right here. This, and then this little ledge, this used to fit in here. And so that piece was actually an L. It created an L. And you know what? It was so awkward to sew, but I always found it very awkward for sewing. Gosh, it only took 20 years, but I finally asked my husband, like, can you take this apart and make it one long unit for me? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. So now I absolutely love it. I feel like I've got more room. Plus when I turn to the side, I'm no longer hitting my knee against this. The other nice thing about this koala cabinet, it's got a couple more built-in storage. This is where I keep all of my sewing needles. I do like to keep a nice supply on hand. Again, I do a lot of sewing and I do a lot of garment sewing. So I have a lot of different needles on hand. You do know you should be changing your needles fairly often, right? And then here is where I keep the feet, the specialty feet that I've purchased for the Fluff machine over the years. And then I also have bobbins in here. Now I went with this bobbin holder and I went with colored bobbins. The reason I went with colored is it tells me those are the bobbins that fit the new machine because they are different bobbins. And then just one more thing, I keep in here the instruction booklets to all the machines, nice and handy if I need it. This big bookshelf is where I keep most of my patterns. As you can see, I've got them in plastic containers and I have them sorted out and labeled. For example, this is jackets and coats for McCall's, Simplicity, Butterick, Quick Sew, and Vogue, which is in a little bit of a bigger tote. For example, if I need tops, I've got them labeled in tops. For me, that's what works best for me versus I know some people do them by pattern number or by manufacturer. And for me, it's just easier if I know I want to sew a top, I pull out tops and I look in there. So up here, these two totes are all of my zippers. I've also purchased a lot of zippers very economically at S.R. Harris when I was shopping there. And also I purchased a mystery bundle of zippers previously from Fabric Mart Fabrics and also from Zipper Stop. I'll leave those links in the comments below. Those are not there all the time, but on occasion they are. Now I also sew some indie patterns. I do have a few PDF patterns and a lot of Berta Style magazine patterns. So I trace those out and this is how I store them. I put them in a, well, they're all these totes. I put them in a envelope. I just draw the design on the front. I put what it is, how much fabric it required, what size I traced out, and then also the issue that it was from. So that is what most of these are here. So in here, I keep all of my interfacing. Got a big stash of interfacing because I sew a lot of garments. And in this one, this is my sulky products. This is like stabilizers and things like that. In this basket here, these are my Sew News patterns that I've downloaded. For example, I was working on the athleisure wear capsule and I was going to do it in a week and that didn't happen. It got so hot here, I just couldn't bear the thought of sewing a sweatshirt. But then all of my itch to stitch patterns, and you know I love my itch to stitch patterns, and I'm probably going to get rid of because I no longer sew Starlight patterns, but look what I found when I was organizing my last pair of toe shoes. Oh my goodness. These are quite old and I can no longer get on them. I would say the last time I put them on and actually went up on toe and point, whatever, can't even remember the correct terminology anymore. It was probably 10 years ago. I just don't have the strength in my ankles any longer to dance in these any longer, but I still keep them. Sentimental. As I mentioned, I have Vogue patterns in the larger totes. I got to be honest with you, I have 2 more large totes of Vogue patterns in the guest room closet. I actually have way too many patterns. I've realized that as I pulled them all together. I'm never going to sew them all. I don't need them all. Plus I have quite a few years of Berta Style magazines. So I'm going to be going through my patterns, especially my vintage Vogue patterns, and probably put them on Etsy or eBay and let somebody else love them. So those are right here. Right here, these totes, those are trims. This is what happens when you go through and organize. You discover how much you really have. So trims I started collecting years ago when I was doing doll clothes, Barbie doll clothes, and American Girl doll clothes. And they've just kind of accumulated over the years. So again, I probably would go through that and donate what I do not need. Up here in this little basket, these are buttons, and you see they're in little baggies. They're in little baggies according to colors. So I don't have a lot of buttons. Well, this is kind of a lot, actually, when you think about it. A couple years ago, I hired my girlfriend's daughter to go through my button collection. It was in a tote about this big. It was a mess. I could never find what I needed when I needed a button. So she was about 10 at the time, and I hired her to go through my button collection, and she coordinated them all for me into little baggies, color coordinated. It's much easier for me to find a button when I need one now. And going through that, I realized there was most of them that I no longer needed. So I gave them to her daughter, who is enjoying them for craft projects and sewing. And don't you just love it when you have somebody that's 10 little bit older now, that is loving to sew. That is pretty much what is here. Now, to the side of that big bookshelf, I keep what used to be a scrapbook storage unit, which I now store thread in. As you can see, I've just got all my threads in here. Got my serger threads, somewhat by color, not completely, somewhat. I can typically find what I need when I need it. I got a lot of thread. This is the drawer I probably pull out most often. I really should organize that. That's my neutral colored threads and just more thread. I do actually have some embroidery thread also and some safety pins tucked in there. And then these are the tape. This is the tape that I use when I alter patterns. So you can see here, I like to use this. This is paper tape. You can find it by the Band-Aids in like a Walgreens, Walmart, Target, those. And you can see this is where I have the scissors that I use most often. It's in a little Inspire. This was a gift from a friend. I've got batting, cushioning in the bottom there so that there's scissors when I'm putting them in there are not hitting the ceramic. These are the pins. These are pins for projects I'm currently working on. Pattern weights. I know I've always said I'm going to cover them and I just never got around to it. I've had these, bought them at a hardware store probably 10 years ago. Love them. My little mini Oliso iron. And then here on the wall, I have put rulers, different rulers for tracing patterns, for measuring. Here is a pant, little ironing board for pants. Apparently, I think I'm going to quilt because I have all kinds of quilting things and tape measures. I've used the 3M hooks so that those come off, especially on this wall because I don't want to damage the wall in case we would ever move. Now we're going to move to the other side of the room. Here is that wall that you see when I tape videos. This is a full faux wood wall. That was on the wall when we moved in. I think it's a really great focal point. And I just cannot decide how to decorate it. I've had different pictures up and I take them down and I put them up and I take them down. I might just take all of them down because I just love the look of the wood. Up here, my husband installed this for me. When we first moved in, the lighting was not very good in this room. And he said, could you put in a utility light? And rather than attach it to the ceiling, he has attached it to the wall, which will make it easier for us to remove without damaging that ceiling. And I love it. I love the light. It's perfect when I am sewing. So moving on, more thread. And then over here is just a little shelf. This is just miscellaneous. And then moving down, these are my ironing supplies because I do keep the ironing board very close here. This is where I keep the ironing ham. I use this the most. That's why it's right there. I've got press cloths in there. I've got my other ironing tools in there. And then in front of that, you will see miscellaneous things that you need when you're ironing. Ironing supplies sit on top of another one of those scrapbook organizers that I'm using for sewing supplies. And again, just miscellaneous supplies that fit in there really nicely. I'll just open these drawers really quickly. You can see marking tools. You can see measuring tools. You guys, if you don't have one of these for cutting buttonholes, you need to get one. It's a little chisel and piece of wood. So much easier than the other way of trying to control it with pins. And speaking of pins, here's all my pins and more supplies, turning tools. And oh, look at that. See, again, I keep thinking I'm going to quilt. Oh, maybe someday I'll quilt. Oh, come on, let's get in there. And more miscellaneous stuff and more miscellaneous shoulder pads because, you know, they're continuing around the room. We just finished with the ironing station. This is one of my dress forms, and that's the one with the broken bottom. She always used to lean up against something or she falls. So then I have my ironing board set up right here. I always keep it set up because I iron so much. If I'm not sewing, I kind of like to iron. I know that's weird. And that faces outside. I get beautiful, beautiful light in the morning, not so much in the afternoon, but that's okay. If the afternoon, it would probably be too hot to sew in here because it's very warm here. And then just moving along this wall, this is just my office supplies, printer for printing PDF patterns, just organization. That bottom, this little bottom right here, that is filled with all of my ideas I've had over the years of all the projects I think I'm going to do and I never will. And again, just miscellaneous office supplies, some devotionals in here. I like to do my morning devotional in here and miscellaneous in here. So let's continue on to the closet. I'm sure you are dying to see what's in the closet because this is where I store my fabric. Okay, this is what's inside. As I said, this is where I store my fabric. And I'll just scan real quickly for you, and then I'll go just a little bit closer. You can see Okay, so to start with, I've got fabric and totes right there. Those are totes that I purchased from Costco, and I purchased them when we moved to pack up all of my fabric, and I just never took it out. So I've got 4 of them over here. I have 3 of them over here, so that's 7 total. So I actually have way too much fabric. I know some people love to have big fabric collections. It actually overwhelms me a little bit. And so that's one reason I was organizing everything. See, I'm just scanning up so you can see some of my fabrics. It's too much. I don't like to have this much on hand. And by organizing it and having it fairly visible, it's going to help me from not purchasing what I do not need. It's more than I'm ever going to need. So in addition, let's go over here. This little box right here, this little storage unit, this is mending. This is alterations and mending. My poor husband, I hate doing jeans. He needs them hemmed. So they're tucked in here. This little purse, isn't this adorable? Bought this in a little boutique, paid way too much for it. And the first time I used it, the chain broke. So I've got it right here because I've got some denim. I'm just going to put a denim strap on it so I can actually use it. Now, tucked in the corner here, you will see these are some PDF patterns that I've printed that were actually too large when I folded them up to put in envelopes. I've just got them hooked onto pant hangers, and then some aprons that I've sewn over the years. And down in this closet, here's my tracing paper, here's cutting boards, and some faux leather fabric rolled up there. Again, more fabric, good grief. And let's go to this side. Right here in this bag, these are patterns that I have cut out, and I'm either working on them or I'm going to be working on them. Like, for example, this is one of the next things that I want to sew up as a summer dress. On top, you can see there's more shoe boxes full of storage. Those are mostly fat quarters, cotton prints, things like that. Got some knit headbands that I keep on hand, labels, seam bindings. Let me see, that would be snaps and elastic and some more little projects that I'm working on. Now, moving away from the fabric closet, you can see that I have a mirror. That's just, of course, you can try things on to see what they look like as you are sewing. Those are the lights that I use when I am filming videos, as well as the tripod. That's just a little kimono jacket that I'm working on for my sister. And tucked back there, you can see there's a cutting mat that I use when I'm using my rotary cutters. I'm just going to back up here just a little bit. And in the middle of the room is my foldable cutting table. It's on wheels. Bought this from Joann's probably 20 years ago. Long time ago. Still works just fine. Folds down. I can move it as I need it. Fold it up as I need it. And that, I've got one more thing to show you. Tucked behind the door over here. It's a great big bulletin board. Right now, I just have some great big long fringe on there that I don't want to get tangled up. I bought that about 6 months ago. Before COVID-19, I had a really cool project in mind, but honestly, nobody has anywhere. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Most of us have nowhere fancy to wear this, and it would be silly to waste my time making that project. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that fringe now. It was pretty a cool idea, though. And then down here, I got some really fun little old vintage Vogue labels. That is that, and that is my sewing space. This is where the magic happens. Now, the one thing that is not located in this room is my collection of Berta style magazines. Those are located in our front office in a bookshelf. It's just easier for me to locate them that way. What is your favorite organizational tip? I love to hear new tips on how best to store things. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that video tour of my sewing space. Thank you for allowing me to share my space with you. I hope you get some ideas on things that you could do in your space. And as I mentioned, and I would love to hear ideas from you also. I'm always looking for great ideas on how to store things. Do me a favor, please give the video a thumbs up. But if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. And you won't miss future videos from me. Until next time, I hope you have a blessed day and happy sewing. And I would